hope you've all had a great day, and we're looking to cap it off with 3 very exciting projects exploring some of the immersive technologies you've been hearing all about. Okay, I'm not going to waste too much time. We're going to set this up as 3 individual presentations from each project, one from each project, and then there'll be about 5 minutes for Q&A after each project, and at the end, if there's any time, we'll do a joint Q&A. So, as with all of the other sessions, feel free to contribute any questions in the Q&A stream at the side. Put any comments in the chat, and yeah, let us know if there's any tech problems, and hopefully we should be fine. But okay, without further ado, I want to introduce you to the first of our 3 speakers, which is Verena Hen from ISO Design, who's going to be talking about a project, Tramway Revisited. Lovely. If you'd like to join us, Verena.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Tom. And while I'm trying to bring up my slides, I just wanted to say it's great to be here again at Beyond. And hello to everyone in Belfast and online. Okay, here we go. My name is Verena Hen, and I'm the head of research and development at ISO Design. And I'm talking to you about our latest R&D project, Tramway Revisited, and why it's useful on these kind of projects to let the research lead you. A bit of background, ISO is a digital design studio based in Glasgow in Scotland, and we design, direct, and build large-scale interactive and immersive media exhibits, mainly for gallery, museums, and the cultural heritage sector. We have a very diverse multidisciplinary team, including filmmakers, animators, graphic and motion designers, researchers, producers, and developers. And there's sort of 2 parts to the company. So the main ISO studio is a very efficient, streamlined, explore more kind of blue sky projects. And it's really this in-house dedicated R&D resource that enables us to undertake very ambitious funded R&D challenges like Tramway Revisited. So the project was funded by Innovate UK via one of their COVID response calls in an attempt to help the arts sector bounce back after the pandemic. And we were working as a big partnership project with 7 companies on the consortium, and we all had different specialisms from digital design to architecture, 3D scanning, modeling, health and safety, and audience research. And we were all working together with internationally renowned arts venue, the Tramway, which is also based here in Glasgow. So the Tramway is a really kind of trailblazing organization leading the world of contemporary theater, performing arts, and visual arts. You might know them from their connection to the Turner Prize. And like many others in the sector, they've had huge challenges over the past 18 months. And it's been an absolute joy, despite all the challenges they were facing throughout the pandemic, to team up with them and to develop new creative ideas how we can help them come back safely and sustainably after the pandemic, back to live events, but also to explore new hybrid formats. So most of our R&D projects, they usually start with a hunch or a challenge that we're trying to solve. In this case, digital innovation and how it can help the art sector bounce back. But it's very dangerous, I would say, to just do an entire project based on assumptions. So we back up our work by a rigorous process that makes sure we're not getting stuck going down some wrong paths. And we're big fans of design thinking and human-centered design. And we use frameworks like the Design Council's Double Diamond, which is a being reflected here in our project timeline and kind of diverging and converging as we go along. So on this project, we've been working with theater makers, art curators, and producers, and also the technical stuff in Tramway. And at the beginning, in the discovery phase, we really opened up the project to lots of different ideas and different voices, and taking in all this feedback to come up with a list of many different opportunities. Then in the second stage, we took those opportunities, formed use cases around them, to then finally select 2 that we wanted to take into pilot and prototyping stage. And I'll talk a little bit more about these 2 over the next few slides. Work in the early days of the project consisted of scanning the entire tramway building, and I mean the entire thing, every room, every cupboard. And we have created a perfect digital model using BIM modeling techniques that we could then take into real-time games engines. And with this digital twin, we were able to quickly visualize what new experiences, new digital experiences might look like for audiences. At this point, we still had all the possibilities on the table, and we knew we had to narrow it down. So we conducted a series of co-design workshops, different audience panels, a lot of stakeholder discussions to find the 2 most promising scenarios that we wanted to take forward and develop into pilots. For our first pilot, we teamed up with Glasgow International, which is Scotland's largest festival for contemporary art. It took place in early June this year, which was when Scotland was, I can't even remember, coming out of the 2nd or maybe 3rd lockdown. So capacities for live audiences were still very limited. In this environment, it was very exciting to then think about how we might archive and preserve the shows that were being shown at Tramway at the time and make them available to as big an audience as possible, while still being respectful to the original works and their creators. This is how Tramway would normally document their shows, using high quality photography. However, these flat images, I think they don't convey the full story. They don't show all the spatial relationships. They don't show all of the atmosphere or the social aspect that we all enjoy when we're going to a gallery with friends. So instead, we sent our photogrammetry team onto the site to capture sculptures at this incredible level of detail, so we could then use them to recreate the show virtually. And here it is, the virtual version of the Glasgow International show at Tramway, at least one of them. And you can see, as a user, you're free to explore. You have 6 degrees of freedom. You can go anywhere you like. Obviously, it can be accessed from anywhere in the world, given you have the right hardware.
2007.
And we can
Paper,
enhance
cardboard,
the
and various
interpretation
materials
by having these digital labels, multiple languages,
Bodes Isaac
putting
Kingeles,
in additional
Dorothee,
video or
2007.
audio. And
Papier,
if you
Pappe
bear
und diverse
with me, I'm just going
Materialien.
to skip forward a little and show you a way you can experience this exhibition in a way that's very different from the real world experience. So we gave audiences the opportunities to kind of shrink themselves down and go into the models and explore them as if they were walking along the streets, and as if you were a tiny person within that fascinating futuristic world. We also proposed some other, maybe more radical ideas to Glasgow International, which they pushed back on a little, because to them, the physicality of the work and all the thought and effort that went in from the curators that had staged the show was so important that They didn't want an experience that was completely different to the real world, but something that was similar but enhanced. So enhancing was really our main focus rather than completely redefining. And in addition, we were very keen to explore the social aspect and how we might replicate social interactions. How do you go to a virtual opening? How do you talk to your friends or other attendees in the space? Or how would you attend a curated tour?
Kingler's referred to his works as extreme maquettes.
So again, just a short
each
snippet
can be thought of
how
as a
we
self-sufficient
prototype
sculpture,
these ideas and those
also as a model
questions.
for a future
In this
work,
case,
a
using
building,
the VR
or
chat
urban master
platform.
plan to then be realised in the world.
For our second pilot that I'm going to talk about, this is an exploration of Covet-compliant theatre spaces and spatial interventions. The architectural team on the project, McGinley Bell, they had already researched dynamic COVID guidelines and mapped how these affects spatial designs and layouts for different types of events and different audiences. And from that, we created this idea of a structure that would sit in the ceiling of tramway and could be suspended and create like a COVID-safe space for theater and performances. And the theater makers we spoke to said, this is very interesting, but maybe too expensive or a little bit too fixed. So we had to further develop the idea and came up with these modular pop-up venues. So we saw value in the idea of having a hybrid that is both a physical structure in real life and a 3D space that you can manipulate. And it comes with like a set of templates and IKEA-like instructions to help you build it. Then the kit arrives, they're all standardized part, very easy to put up and to transport. And using the 3D version, you could block out performances, you could have digital rehearsals or test your multimedia in the space. And of course, you could also pair up the physical and the digital to create hybrid events that happen at the same time, both in real life and online. So not only have we learned a lot from these two pilots, but we also developed new relationships, both with members of the consortium as well as new collaborators that we wouldn't have the chance to meet otherwise. And here's just a quick taste of like new work that is coming down the line for us. Especially excited to deepen our relationship with Tramway through the Dressing Above Your Station virtual exhibition coming in 2022. And this really brings me back, I promise this is my last slide. It brings me back to two key interests and why we founded IsoLabs in the first place. First, to conduct our own research-led projects, and second, to develop these partnership projects. So if anyone in this session today has been intrigued by what I showed, if you're looking for an industry partner or just would like to chat more, happy, please give me a shout. And I'm looking forward to your questions in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Verena. That was fantastic. Well, we're gonna have about 5 minutes for questions. So I'll open it up to the floor. But I was just going to ask one quick question myself. Was just seeing that last diagram and seeing all of the number of consortium partners and thinking about living in a time of COVID when everything's changing. I just wondered if there was any shift in the project focus over the last 6 months, because as things come to light, things change and new ideas emerge. Anyway, I'll leave you with that, but I'll step off. And have we got any questions from the floor? No. Okay. Well, no. You can answer mine then.
Oh, great. Well, there's definitely been shifts in the project, and I think going in, we didn't know how long lockdowns would last. We didn't know when we would be able to work together in the same room. And just conducting all these different workshops and meetings online has been a big learning experience for us. And I've become very proficient in using tools like Miro and Google Slides and ways to engage people on a Zoom call, to get the same kind of energy that you would normally get from an in-person workshop.
Yeah, but things are shifting as, I think all of our ways of working and collaborating, certainly around design and creating experiences, is changing. Okay, we've got a question from Mal, which is, what is the level of funding? What's the level of funding required to achieve this research?
So this in total was a £350,000 project, but not all the money went to us. It was split across all the different partners. But just to give you an idea how big of a project it was. Okay.
And wow, I mean, and so what's your next, the next phase? Are you already in process of applying for further funding, or because the original aim of this was to develop a toolkit, and obviously a toolkit is expandable. You've developed some tools and techniques. Where would you like to take this next?
Yeah, we're already using the 3D scan of the space to develop that next exhibition, Dressing Above Your Station. So we could directly take the output from this project and apply it to the next project, which is also with Tramway, and putting together a virtual exhibition about a Scottish painter named Stephen Campbell.
Oh, okay.
But there were also other things on the project that I haven't mentioned in this presentation in detail. But another thing we explored was dynamic responsive signage using e-ink. And we've just had an inquiry from the National Theatre of Scotland whether we wanted to do a project with them that involved these e-ink signs.
Okay, interesting. Okay, we've got another question in the main chat from Stephen Rose, asking, just wondering what your thoughts are on innovation strategy, key texts or systems that you've used.
Stephen is a good friend. He was actually part of one of the consortium members. So hi, Stephen. Okay, great seeing you here.
He knows the weak points to question.
Exactly. Yeah. Innovation strategy. I think there isn't really one way to innovate. There is no one way of doing it. But as I mentioned earlier, having a process is really important, and kind of trusting the process and being open to things popping up, unexpected things, and just going with them and taking a chance, I think, is really important.
Brilliant. Okay. Right. Well, we've come to time, but as I say, there may be some more time at the end to ask group questions. But I'll let you go, Verena, and I will welcome to the stage our next speaker, who is Rebecca Hardy from Real Reality, who's going to talk to us about her project around bringing together film, TV, and augmented reality assets. Okay. Fantastic. There you are.
I just suddenly...
Welcome. Right, well, I shall leave you to it. You've got your presentation all set up. I won't waste any more of your time, but thank you very much, and enjoy.
Thank you so much. I just managed to somehow dive out of the internet there, so apologies, but managed to get in, I think, just back in time. So hi, very warm welcome to you all. It's lovely that you've all sort of given up your time at the end of probably a very busy conference day to be here and to kind of hear our presentation. So as soon as I can get this to work, as it's just crashed on me, bear with me for 1 second. Sorry, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Quite all right.
Apologies again for that terrible start. Hi, everybody. My name is Rebecca Hardy, and I'm the director and lead creative of Edge 21 Studio. It was established last year to encompass, develop immersive adventures for film, television, arts and culture. And I'm very excited today to be here to present on Real Reality. Can you move me forward, Tom? So a little bit about me. I'm actually a filmmaker by trade, so that's my background. I've been a filmmaker for about 22 years, and as well as sort of working in broadcast, I work in sort of promotional, commercial sector. But I think, filmmaker by trade and filmmaker at heart, and I am absolutely obsessed with film. Anything to do with film, behind the scenes, locations, you know, I'm very heavily immersed in the kind of fandom and fan tourism world. And I think what sort of emerged to me over as I started to create and develop this idea for real reality was actually there's a whole world out there of locations that aren't really being, I think used as much as they can do in an immersive way. If we go to the next slide, Tom. So my initial idea was to develop an immersive film and TV location app. So Real Reality is actually an entertaining and engaging app for sharing screen content and mapping film and TV locations. We use a range of immersive technologies. Real Reality puts you actually at the heart of that film or TV location. The new app, which it sort of emerged to be, and I'll talk you through sort of how that came to be as we move forward, but the app actually combines augmented reality, immersive interactivity, location information and screen content. So the user can actually kind of develop their own experience at each of the locations. So if we move forward, Tom. So Real Reality is kind of how it actually ended up looking, and it is, and I'm going to punt for it right now, it is available now in the as both Android and Apple in the stores, and it is free. So please do take a moment to find it later on and have a little play and explore the app, and I'll just talk you through a bit more of the content. If we can move forward, Tom, to the next one. But before I do so, I just want to do a little bit of a shout out to the people that I worked with and supported me on this project. So thank you very much to Cluster. And I want to put some thank yous out there because without you, this wouldn't have been possible, who actually sort of backed this idea and supported me throughout. To Sugar Creative, who I worked with to design and develop the app. They also did the Wallace and Gromit Big Fix app alongside Fictioneer, so it was great to harness some of their expertise on the project as well. And a little shout out to PDR as well, to Joe and Andy, who supported me through the support of Cluster in the R&D stage and really started to think about the user-centered design. And a final shout out to Claire Heat and Gemma Beard for your support too. Thank you. Next slide, please. So, Real Reality. We're talked about sort of film locations and immersing myself in the film world. I live in Cardiff and I'm based in Cardiff, and I'd often walk around Cardiff Bay, which is very much home to Doctor Who. In fact, you can barely move without Doctor Who invading you in some way. And you'd see lots of tourists. You'd see people out sort of saying, oh, that's the bit where that was filmed, and that was the bit where that was filmed. And yet there wasn't sort of a way to really harness that information. Many of us might be familiar with other film and sort of TV location apps, but they didn't really sort of do much other than share information. And I wanted to create a kind of a genre-defining app which pushed that forward and used some immersive technologies. So the app itself contains different zones, and at the moment it's just got one zone, which is Cardiff Bay, because it's a sort of commercial prototype that we've just launched 7 weeks ago in the stores. The mapping system, again, we wanted to take to a different level and wanted to include it as a 3D mapping system, which also celebrated the architecture of each of the areas. So people could start to identify the buildings and the spaces in a sort of 3D way through the mapping system that is there. Next slide, please. So Real Reality has it skipped a slide at all, Tom? Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. So when you go on your 3D map, you come to the little locations, which you would have seen little icons. And when you click on that icon, and you can do that at home. So for those of you that can't make it to Cardiff Bay, don't worry, there's an at-home experience as much as there is an in-location experience. When you click on those little icons, you come to your sort of your page of information for each of the points of interest. So you'll see there we've got Wells Millennium Centre and Vol del Plas. When I did the user research, one of the things that came up what I was quite surprised about was actually how much people love trivia. They wanted lots of trivia. So I wanted to make sure that actually all the information was on those pages, as well as all the kind of immersive technology that I wanted to bring into the project. The actual, when I user research, the top two things that people liked were behind the scenes and locations. So it really gave me that sense that actually the people in the sort of fan world and fan tourism are really interested in those things combined. We also introduced a 360 photographs for each of the locations. So if you're using this at home and not in the location, you can still access all the information and also the 360 photos. During the user research stage as well, we realised that the 360 photos not only enabled people to see this place beforehand, but also enabled the opportunity for people that perhaps find it awkward or difficult to go to spaces for a first time. So they could use that function to familiarize themselves with the surroundings and the area to hopefully build up some confidence in going to that place as well. So that was quite important, that it felt quite accessible. And when people were looking to go to sort of Cardiff Bay or those other areas, they had the opportunity to sort of view it and see it before they go, as much as the fan tourism aspect of it. If we go to the next slide. So when you're actually at home, you can access that information and the 360 photos, but to really get into the immersive stuff, you do have to be at each of those points of interest. When you go to a point of interest on the map, you get a selection of options. You get video content and the augmented reality aspect. The video content, there is a watch list with bespoke and original films created by fans of the programs. So when you go to those locations, you can unlock them, and they're unlocked in your watch list, so you can view them at the location or you can view them at home. I'll just go on to the next slide, which I think is the bit that everybody's going to be very interested in, which is the augmented reality aspect. So the AR content, I got quite obsessed, and I don't know if anybody else did, but I got quite obsessed of watching people play Pokemon Go. I actually got more obsessed with watching them do it than actually doing it myself. And that was because it was really exciting to see people and the drivers of wanting to go on and collect stuff, wanting to find stuff, wanting to build stuff. And an augmented reality film set had never been created before. So within real reality, when you visit the points of interest, you can also find and discover a variety of AR assets and items that would help you create your own augmented reality film set. So there's characters, there's cameras, there's set, there's props. There's 29 different items across the 12 locations in Cardiff Bay. So much like Pokemon Go, you would go to the location and hunt out and find your set item. Also, some of the aliens that we've put into the AR ended up sort of moving, and we ended up chasing them through the different spaces, which was a sort of added bonus and wasn't expected to happen. But if we go on to the next slide there for me, Tom. And once you've collected your items, you can then build your own film set in augmented reality. And this can be done at any size and in any space. So the couple of examples there on the screen where on the left square, as I'm looking at it, you've got them actually on the street, and that's to scale. So the dogs to scale, the sort of alien plants to scale, the camera's massive in a jib. And the picture in the middle there is just on a park bench where it's created a small scale augmented reality film set. You can take photos through the app and you can share those sets with others as well, which I think is a real plus in terms of, you know, sharing content, creating content and putting it out there. The items and the characters also link to the locations. So as I mentioned, Doctor Who, if you're at the Doctor Who location, you can find an alien, you can get a ghost and a werewolf at the Being Human location. So it's all like a synergy between the location, the program, the content, the video, the AR. So it all merges together in that way. I'm just going to end on the teaser trailer, which is the next slide for me, Tom, which hopefully pulls together all the things that I've shared. If we could hit play. Great, thank you very much indeed. And just in case I didn't mention it at the beginning, it's available in the stores now, Apple and Android.
Wow, thank you for that, Rebecca. That was fantastic. Yeah, and bang on time. What a professional.
After that terrible start, I managed to
in the business.
I managed to recover. Thank you.
Okay, before anybody else gets a chance to ask a question, that seems like something that actually you made for yourself, didn't you? So this was what you dreamed of as a growing teenager. And so did you do any user research beyond yourself in this?
Yeah, you'll be pleased to know, Tom. Yeah, you're right. I did create this as a huge fan myself as well. So I won't lie about that. But yeah, absolutely. We did a lot of user research. I actually prepared a questionnaire with the support of like Cluster and the PDR team, which reached out to film fans across lots of different sectors. And the questions weren't around sort of what would you want from an app, but was around what you would want from a fan tourist perspective and what's important to you. You know, when you visit locations, what are the things that you'd want to see? So I gathered sort of nearly 300 responses in terms of that. So we're able to really identify that locations, behind the scenes and information trivia were the 3 top priorities when it comes to sort of fan tourism, which is sort of built into the app. We then did also a lot of testing, right from sort of paper prototypes through to sort of first mock-ups of the UIs, through to then the prototype of the actual app. And we tested that across the board with lots of different groups, from teenagers right through to older people, and I put myself in an older people category. But yeah, so we made sure that actually we really tested that app at every level, and to ensure that the user, what they wanted, was driven at the heart of that. I think because I'm a total film geek as well, that had a plus, but it wasn't making it for me. I was making it for others.
No, but the seed, you took the seed and then shared it with others and found out what would work for them. Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
We've got a question from Justin Lewis, who asked, do you have plans to expand the location?
Absolutely. Very pleased to say that
beyond Cardiff Bay.
We do. So Cardiff City is going to be coming very soon. So we're going to probably launch that in the new year when the weather's a little bit better and everyone wants to get out and in the springtime. But I'm actually very pleased to say that I'm in conversations with 4 other geographical regions outside of Wales who are very interested in exploring this as well. So we hope to launch 2 to 3 new zones as a minimum every year. So the app will continue to grow with new content. And also the aim is the video contents will become completely exclusive. So there won't be any links to any third party. It'll all be sort of real reality original films in there as well.
Okay, because that comes on to, there's a question from Mal who's actually on next, but he was asking about what the business model is. How are you gonna fund all of this expansion?
Good question, Mal. So the first zone is free because that's the way to get everybody involved and excited. And there's certain content already in there as well. So as I say, you can sort of download and have a little play of the AR set. But each of the following zones will be paid for zones. So it's going to be less than a cup of coffee kind of price. But actually, the further zones that people want to engage with and experience, they will have to pay a small amount of money to do so. So then the business model, there will be certain amounts of advertising, although to flag, my user research did say that the thing that people hated the most in any app is the adverts. So it's using that very carefully around supporting businesses and local businesses to perhaps promote them, but not in a way that is full on, have the spamming of the advertising, but a way that perhaps says, actually, you've been to this location, do you fancy having a coffee or a bite to eat at these 2 establishments? So it feels like it's part of the experience, not a sort of done to thing.
Okay. Right, we've got time for one more question from Sally Griffith, who's saying, first of all, she wants to say that she loved it.
Thank you, Sally.
And she will download it immediately after this. But she's asking how are you promoting the app, and are you able to gather feedback now that it's live?
Yeah, thank you, Sally, for the question. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. So we've done a light touch launch at this stage because we wanted to really push and promote the app once, if I'm honest with you, once there were some paid for parts in it as well. So Gemma, who I mentioned earlier, is working with me on the social media. So Real Reality has its own Twitter and Instagram channel, which we're slowly gathering followers. So if you would like to join us, it's at Real Reality App. And we're promoting through there. But also what we want the social media to do is to talk about films and to talk about locations. So it's not just promoting the app, it's actually a source of information around films and fan tourism. So we hope that people will kind of follow us, not just for the app, which is great, but also for the kind of collective knowledge and information that we're putting out there as well. So in the new year, in the springtime, we're going to do a huge launch of the app where we can kind of really push it and promote it more.
Okay, lovely. Right, well, we're out of time for this project specific question session, but there will be drinks this evening that I understand you'll all be at, so you've got plenty of opportunities to come and talk to Rebecca then. In the meantime, I just want to say thank you, Rebecca, and and look forward to seeing it develop over the coming months and years.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Tom. Cheers.
Okay, lovely. And then I'm going to ask Tom and Mal. Mal, if you'd like to share your camera and video so that I can bring you back, thank you, after so rudely knocking you off before. But Tom and Mal are from Biome Collective, and they are going to talk to us about their project, The Maze. There you go, we've got Tom, and we should have Mal.
Hi there. Thank you,
Hi,
Tom.
Pleasure.
Nice to see another Tom. How do I share my screen? I guess I hit this button here. All right, great. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, everybody. And great to hear the other presentations. My name's Tom DeMaio. I'm here with Malabas. We're both artists in our own right and game makers and designers. And we're here to talk about a particular project that we've been working on recently that was funded by Story Futures Academy. I guess I'll tell you a little bit about Biome Collective. We set up Biome Collective about 6 years ago now to basically be a home for people who wanted to create digital art, video games, and new immersive experiences in a safe, creative environment, and to make things that hadn't been done before, and to push the boundary of what games can be, immersive experiences can be, and playful art. And because of what we have a very diverse portfolio of augmented reality, virtual reality, traditional games, games that are presented in exhibitions. And because of this, we've had some really incredible collaborations with people from all kinds of disciplines who are interested in kind of in this kind of emerging, well, it's now emergent digital creativity, if you like. So I'll just very quickly speak to you about our project, The Maze, which began about 10 years ago. It's one of the first projects that Mal and I worked on together. We were contacted by the National Theatre Scotland, and it was actually a community outreach team who wanted to ask a question. And like all good projects, it asked a challenging and really interesting question from us, which was, how can we combine a community-led project that involved the community in story writing, filmmaking, and used the history of Dundee itself, the area of Dundee, and the city itself. How could we bring all of those things together in a single experience that was playful and used all AR, augmented reality, in one form or another? And in answer to this question, we ended up working with the National Theatre Scotland, and lots of local community groups to create a game that can be played on the city streets of Dundee, that used the local area, architecture, history, culture, and stories generated by young people, old people, lots of volunteer groups, and is now a kind of part of the experience of Dundee if you so choose to use a mobile phone and download the game. So it was a fantastic opportunity and a great project. And I guess one of the things for us to mention is that we used augmented reality, but we used sound as the focus because we wanted people to be present in wherever they were. And we have sound and music is a very core part of all the work that we do at Biome Collective. So just quickly, the pros that we had making a game like that you play on the city streets, that you use headphones to walk around, listen to a story as your that knows where you are, it's location specific. That allowed us to do something that was really effective and really immersive. We had an incredible team working with National Theatre of Scotland that really supported us, and I think that was mentioned by some of the other speakers today, the importance of having a people who support your ideas, support making something new, and are willing to kind of to keep that support going until throughout the entire process. It takes a bit of courage, and it takes imagination. I think in terms of the other things that helped the project, we were inspired by the community and the stories. It helped us to anchor ourselves in reality, which allowed us then to kind of move into the more fantastical elements of the project. We had incredible we had incredible opportunities afforded to us. And like I said before, it was very tightly connected to other. On the flip side, the major problem we had beyond time and budget is that you can only play it in Dundee, which I've already talked about the benefits, but the downside of that is it's only playable in one location, and it's very difficult to describe to other people. This was 10 years ago, before Pokemon Go, etc., etc. So in order to get people to play, we had to invite them to Dundee, etc., etc. So it had its challenges. Now, the way that we approach kind of all alternate and augmented reality projects is to take a kind of think about the real world expectations that people have. Think about the imaginative possibilities that the technology and just creativity can afford and add to these kind of experiences, and selecting the right technology and designing an experience that balances all these things out. And that's how we approached Other, and that's how we approach most of our projects. So the major problem we had, like I said, with Other is it was only playable in one location, and we've been working on various projects since. And then quite recently, we were working with the Story Futures Academy, and we had the opportunity to work with some writers. And we met a writer called Adam Butcher, who presented a very similar idea to Other. So we approached him and said, this is something that we would maybe this is something we could work on together. We have this experience. We actually we actually selected his project as part of a Story Future Academy pool of projects to work on. And we got a little bit of funding. So with our experience in games, interaction, sound, and previous experience with Other, Adam's experience in story, film, and games, and a little bit of funding and support from the Story Futures Academy, we kind of embarked on a new project which used some of what we'd already learned from Other, and some of what Adam brought to the table as well. So the question we had in this very small budget, very limited capacity, the question we asked was, how could we make a game that could be played anywhere in the world, and how can we refine that in the constraints of a 1 month, 2 month long project into something that all we wanted to do was create a moment of magic? Because this is a prototype we're talking about here. This is a very, very small funded project, but we wanted to see if we could take what we'd learned from Other to the next level, even in some respects. So it's, how do we create a moment of magic? So the constraints that we had on us for this moment of magic were the same as ever, really: time and money. We had to consider the tech, the narrative. We had to work out how to create new narratives. We had to select which media we would use, and we had to try and find the right people to work on the project in the brief time we had available. But again, by using real-world expectations, and when I say that, I guess I should clarify it a little bit. In this respect, everybody's used to walking around in the real world with their headphones on, listening to music. So what if we use our imaginative possibilities to take that to one level further and make that music or sound or story interactive? And that's essentially, if we use the technology that people are already familiar with, we can approach AR from a much more kind of gentle approach, if you like. And so I think what we landed on for our approach to the maze was Pokemon Go meets a podcast, essentially. And with this kind of horror theme, this world that Adam had created, it allowed us to create to have a narrative basis for an experience. And we used slightly different technologies, which we can talk about in the questions and answers, if you like, to try and make this something that could be played anywhere. As with most projects, and most of you guys will be familiar with this, the kind of loop of testing, considering, iterating, using the technologies, putting it all together, testing. This is something that goes round and round. And ultimately, we have a product prototype now, which is functional, works on Android and iPhone. As a proof of concept, it just about works. It's something that you can experience anywhere as long as you're near to points of interest that the game might be able to pick up. We've kind of gone through a branding and design, and we started sharing it. In terms of the future, we're now doing testing with, I can't remember how many people are testing at the moment, but we're paid for a testing program, because again, one of the things that's really important to us is that we think it's magical when a game that you're playing knows where you are and feeds that back to you. And the people that have played it before have agreed with us, but we need to test it and have enough positive feedback that will allow us to describe this experience to other people to get further funding, and to develop further into something that can be commercially deployable. And I guess the other thing that we're really keen to do is, because this is something that bleeds into reality, we want to work along more of the ARG side of things, where a bit like the last speaker was talking about, having media and platforms outside the game that reinforce the kind of the narrative world. So websites, Twitter, etc., just giving people clues and fragments of story and things that people can add to the experience. So that's a kind of brief and perhaps confusing, hopefully not too confusing, description of the maze. It's a game that you can play anywhere, through sound and story, transforms anywhere in the world into a kind of parallel universe of mystery and adventure. So we have a lot of things that we'd like to add to this. We're really excited to be working on this kind of Sonic AR type of project again, and we see it as a fantastic platform for people to experience immersive stories and games. So that's us. Did that work? Did you see everything?
Yeah. Yes, it was perfect. It was great. But if you turn off the screen share now, so if you press the icon, that's it. Perfect. Then we're back to normal. No, it was really interesting, and it always amazes me how much we see in the media. So much about augmented reality is focused on the visual, but there are so many interesting projects. Like we've got Paul Clark, who did the Lost Palace, talking tomorrow, who uses audio and just the occasional touch of haptic really, really effectively to really create a very magical experience. And in some ways, I think sometimes more than the visual.
Yeah, I think you have to consider, like, what is it you're doing and why you're doing it every time, and use the right kind of medium that kind of affords that. And it was really important for us as individuals, but also for thinking about the audience walking around a city they might not be familiar with, that we didn't want them holding the phone out. For our particular project is slightly different, because our project, there's a kind of, when I speak about other, and when we talk about the maze, they both have a kind of horror theme. So there's kind of scary elements to that. And the last thing you want is people feeling vulnerable already, potentially, hopefully not too vulnerable, and then holding out their phone in the streets. I think there's something to be said for kind of connecting people more than ever to their surroundings through sound, rather than putting something up between them and their surroundings. It certainly works for these projects.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, there's another project. Rob Morgan from Playlines will be talking about the project Consequences they did about the sort of rap and grime community, that using Bose glasses. So again, allowing people to move naturally within a space, it changes how they engage, which is very important in a kind of narrative and experiential context. We've got a question from Joanna Lee, asking, what triggers the game to give you another bit of the story? What do you have to do to make that happen?
Sorry, I missed that. Mel, can you take that?
Yeah, happy to jump in. I think it's a great question, Joanne, and I think this is really important in the fact that Other, which was many years ago, was triggered by local-based GPS markers that we put ourselves. So there's you walk past the church, we knew you were walking past the church, you'd get that dialogue or that narrative based on that. Now we're using a dynamic system that uses points of interest data. So data is available. We've used free data for this version, things such as like, this is a road, this is a church, this is a pub, this is a bench, even to the point where it's a bench. So we've used open street data to essentially allow you to progress through a dynamic narrative. And it works really well. I see Isabella's in the chat there as well. And Story Features Academy are actually helping us with testing at the moment. Because one of our biggest questions up to now is, does this work everywhere? If you're in the middle of nowhere, the countryside, where there might not be any data, what happens then? We've already incorporated solutions for that, but it's very early stage. One thing that's worth noting, I can see Luke Savage is here as well from Sony.
Amazing.
He got to play Other many years ago. That's great. One thing that's really worth sharing is that because of the learning we generated, nearly a decade ago on Other, and we've been doing other projects, in VR, in AR, for normal games, PlayStation, Xbox, etc. We do a lot of physical installations. A lot of that learning from these other projects have kind of come into this point where we've been able to create something that's actually quite audience friendly on a tiny budget. And that's why I asked the ISO team earlier how big their budget was. I think 350 grand it was. Our budget for this was like 10 grand. It was tiny, but a lot of that was because we kind of know what we're doing in this area. So we were able to be very cost effective actually, and create something that can be played anywhere. We're testing that now, but so far so good.
You just mentioned though that it took account of the publicly available data about the physical environment. As we move into a more surveilled society, I don't know what data there is on people and on passers-by. Is that something you could incorporate into the interaction?
I'm not sure why you would want to, just because in this kind of experience, it's, with augmented reality, it depends what you're doing, but you are blurring the boundaries of reality. If you're doing a good job, or if you're doing a job that you're aiming to do that, the fourth wall is very delicate, shimmering, and that's part of the excitement of it. And I think there's something to be said for holding. There's a certain safety that we've always wanted to hold the player in, and I think. Just thinking about it now, I think in involving other people, unless they are part of the game, of course, might just be taking it a little bit too far. One of the things we did do with Other, because we had access to the actual city, is we did involve real people in the game. So there's part of the game where you actually go into a cafe that knew about people playing the game, and because they knew that people were going in to ask for a specific question and they had a role to play, it really heightened the experience for the player, because suddenly they were breaking that fourth wall. They knew they were playing a game, but then suddenly in a public place, they were having to kind of converse with someone who was also in the game. And that to us was a really good amount of human interaction, I suppose. I'm not sure why. I mean, even though even if it's possible, why we would do it, but I just haven't thought about it. I'm just riffing off your question right now.
It's definitely possible. It's definitely possible, and I think it opens up the experience to be elevated in various ways. But as Tom said, coming from a particular thematic angle, we hadn't fully considered that to date. I mean, the things we're considering at the moment is different mechanics to elaborate on, collection mechanics that were mentioned earlier in the other presentation, things like that to kind of engage people in the story and in the experience. And beyond that, as Tom said, we in our previous game, we used a local business, we engaged with them. So there'd be ways to kind of engage local businesses, possibly that it could be kind of distributed across anywhere really. But we're at a very interesting point where we've got some really cool tech that's actually audience facing, which means our test data is very valid because people are able to play it, which means that the next version will build on that strength essentially. So we're quite an exciting point in the project.
Yeah. I mean, Brilliant. It's very early. It's a very early prototype at this stage, but it's allowed us just enough time to test some things, which we're pleased to say that they do seem to work.
Okay, we've got time for one more question. I'll just sneak it in the last minute. But Miranda McKay asks, have you ever included live performance elements in your project?
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could say so. The first project we did with the National Theatre of Scotland, we worked with these incredible practitioners. There's Philippa Tomlin, Pamela Walker were the kind of the representatives of the National Theatre, and part of the conversation, the process that we went through was this idea of what is it we're going to make, and part of that was the idea of a joint game and live theatre promenade, which kind of it changed ultimately into they ended up being separate experiences, but that gave us the idea and the confidence to approach people like the people in the bar, the cafe, to be involved. So it's definitely something that we've thought of in the past, and again would work in a localized experience. And there's something amazing about, I mean, there's one of the things that worked about this collaboration between games and theatre is that it flipped a lot of the traditional roles on their head. So in a sense, you become the performer, you become the live performer, the city becomes the stage, if you like, and then these strange idiosyncratic moments happen where you're not quite sure what else is part of the experience. So in some respect, everything becomes part of the live side of the experience. But beyond that, we never really incorporated it as fully as we first wanted to.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I saw that you put the website in the chat. Obviously, all of your details are up on the. Sorry, Mal, did you want to say?
I was going to just say, if anyone's interested in having a go, we can send you links. So please do get in touch, and we'd be very happy to share Android or iOS build. Be great to have people's feedback.
Brilliant, lovely. Okay, right. Well, we're not going to have that time for group chat after all, group questions, because we've filled our slot. But thank you all. Thank you to Verena and Rebecca, to Tom and Mal, and thank you to all the viewers. Hope you have a wonderful evening tonight. But don't go too heavy, because we'll be back again tomorrow at 10 a.m. for a whole nother day. So enjoy, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
There you go. Bye-bye.